I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. This is the Ancient Way Sesshin, October 2024, Day 5, Talk 6. I'd like to share a story with you today about the Buddha's life, taken from the life of the Buddha. This is a story of an interaction between the Buddha and a bhikkhu, a monk named Meghiya. He was the Buddha's attendant. They were living in community. Each day they would get up and go into the village and beg for food and then come back to live with the community. So our friend Meghiya went out, he put on his robe and he went out to beg for food. And on the way back, he walked by a river and it was very pleasant and lovely. He was walking up and down for exercises and he thought to himself, oh, this is so pleasant and so charming. This is where I want to come and meditate. This is eminently suitable for the endeavor, he thought to himself. I'm a young person, I come from a good family, I'm ready to fight the good fight. If the Buddha will give me permission, I'll come just to this place and endeavor. Endeavor means to try hard to achieve something. This does not bode well for Meghiya. In Dogen's words, he is trying to carry the self forward to illuminate the myriad things. He wants to effort his way to realization. It seems like such a reasonable idea. Here I am. This is where I want to go. This is what I need to do. Here's the spot. And yet, it's delusion. To carry the self forward and illuminate the 10,000 things is the very definition of delusion. Been there before? So Meghiya goes to the Buddha and he says, I approached this riverbank, it's beautiful, I saw a pleasant and charming mango grove. It's eminently suitable for the endeavor. I would go there, I would go and endeavor there. So the Buddha says, well, we're alone, it's just the two of us. Why don't you wait for some of the other bhikkhus to come? Why don't you wait for some of your friends to come along? So a little aside, the other day I was talking about these questions that we have. And one of my questions is, why can't I do this by myself? Why can't I just go to a cave and meditate alone? Why do I have to be with all of you? And been trying to figure this out for 15 years. What is it about Sangha? What the heck, right? I was so shocked when I heard that. Buddha, Dharma, get it? Sangha, what? So when I read one of these stories and I hear something like this, it catches my attention. The Buddha says, we're alone. Why don't you wait a while for some of the other bhikkhus to come along? Meghiya asks him again. He says, well, I've done everything I need to do. there's really nothing more that needs to be done around here, but I really need to do this. I really need to go, I need to endeavor. I need to try hard. So would you just give me your permission so I can go to that mango grove and do this? And again, the Buddha says, well, we're alone. Why don't you just wait a while? Third time. Reverend Sir, the Lord has nothing further that should be done. I would go to this mango grove and endeavor. And the Buddha finally says, as you're talking of endeavoring, Meghiya, what can I say? Just go ahead and go do that now. So Meghiya bows to the Buddha, and he goes to the mango grove and sits down and begins. And it doesn't go well for him. These thoughts keep coming up, these bad, unwholesome thoughts, very distracting, sensual thoughts, thoughts of malevolence and cruelty. And he thinks, what is going on here? I came out with such faith, and I'm trying to do everything that I know how to do, and I'm here, and yet I am so overwhelmed by these thoughts of pleasure and sensuality and cruelty. Nothing further to do. I need to do more. I need to meditate more. I need to work harder. Have you ever had thoughts like that? Meghiya has the best of intentions. We have the best of intentions. And we mistakenly believe that carrying the self forward to meet those 10,000 things, to meet the world, will end suffering and bring joy and enlightenment. Meghiya began his practice from a place of separation, from a firm, if unrecognized, sense of self. I am going to practice. This is my practice. This is my endeavor. And inevitably, thoughts which grow from this fundamental delusion arose. Thoughts of greed and anger, of ignorance, thoughts of desire, unkindness. And then Meghiya believed his thoughts, and he became overwhelmed. This is such an ordinary experience. This happened to this person 2,500 years ago. Has it happened in this zendo, on this retreat? It's happened to me on this retreat. Do we need to believe our thoughts? Can we see them as only thoughts and then let them go? But Meghiya didn't recognize this. He was overwhelmed by his thoughts. So he went back, he left. He could not stay in the beautiful mango grove any longer. He went back to the Buddha and he said, I was staying in the mango grove and these thoughts kept coming up. I thought, this is so odd, I'm overwhelmed by these thoughts. What should I do? And the Buddha said, when mind deliverance is yet immature, these 5 things lead to maturity. When you're not ready to sit calmly, there's some things that you can do to help yourself. 5 things that lead to maturity. How can we activate this body, this mind, this heart to mature it, to bring it to a place where there's a fertile soil for the words of the Dharma and the truth to be dropped in so that we can take them in and express them. So, here, Meghiya, a bhikkhu has good friends, good associates, good companions. When mind deliverance is yet immature, this is the first thing that leads to maturity. That caught my attention. It's like, this again. The Buddha is saying to begin with friendship. It reminds me of the story of Ananda, the attendant of the Buddha. He was speaking with some friends. They were talking about the spiritual life, and he said, friendship is at least half of the spiritual life. And he turned to the Buddha and said, isn't that so? Friendship is at least half. And the Buddha said, no, it is the whole of the spiritual life. What does that mean? Still working on that. When mind deliverance is yet immature, this is the first thing that leads to maturity. What might that look like in practice? It sounds good in the story, but when we're sitting down right here in this room, what might that look like? Thoughts arise, we get caught in fantasy or planning, or the inner critic is up. How is friendship helpful? What really is the experience of friendship, of caring, of being cared for, of being held? What does that feel like? And can we bring that feeling to Zazen? Look around. Do you sincerely wish that every person here has the best experience, has the best sesshin? Can you recognize and feel that everyone wishes that for you as well? That's grounding. It's an opening. Furthermore, we have the support not only of the people in this room, but of all those who have come before us. Our whole lineage has dedicated their merit, the merit of their practice, to helping us in ours, just as we sincerely wish for those who come after us to be free from suffering. The Buddha is reminding us to anchor in the loving support of others when we feel adrift, to anchor into that experience of an open heart, the physical sensation of support. Let that sink in for a minute. He goes on. Furthermore, Meghiya, a bhikkhu is virtuous. He lives restrained by the precepts, being endowed with conduct. He trains in the training rules that he has accepted. When mind deliverance is yet immature, this is the second thing that leads to maturity. The precepts. In the circle the other night, Hogan commented how everyone was settling down. And Soten mentioned that it may be because in this container, we're all following the precepts, that this adherence to the precepts is itself stabilizing. The container of sesshin being one in which the precepts are supported and held automatically. Three of the aspects of the Eightfold Path have to do with living ethically. So, yes, it helps groups of people live together and support each other. But it also is settling to the practice. It's an anchor for our practice. How does it relate to sitting on the cushion today? At the moment when the mind is churning with thought and we're having difficulty settling? What's your favorite flavor of dualism? Planning, analyzing, resentment. We can remember to affirm the importance of living an ethical life, to live in accord, to feel the weight of the wagesa or the raksu on our body, to see it on other people, to renew our commitment and then let that thought go, resting in alignment, resting in being upright, stable. He goes on. Furthermore, Meghiya, a bhikkhu obtains at will, with no trouble or difficulty, talk that is helpful to opening the mind, which conduces to turning away to dispassion, cessation, peace, direct knowledge, enlightenment, and nibbana. That is, talk about fewness of wishes, talk about contentment, about seclusion, about being non-gregarious, talk about putting forth energy, about virtue, about concentration and wisdom. This is the third thing that leads to maturity. This is bathing in wholesome conversation. This is immersion in the Dharma through words, especially in a loving and supportive environment. Those words can come in. This is how humans learn, with repetition, being supported in an environment, and hearing words. We orient repeatedly in a certain direction, and it becomes part of us, it becomes part of who we are, and then we express that. But this is a silent retreat. How do we do that? There's such wisdom in the form of Sesshin. I marvel at it. We quiet the mind, or at least calm it down, and then we seed this body, mind, with the words of the chants, with the poems, and with Dharma talks. We can make it a practice to be especially open to the spoken word when it occurs during this retreat. We have the potential to be exceptionally receptive to words that are spoken, especially when all of the inconsequential or unhelpful talk is excluded. Allow the wisdom of these chants, the sutras, these talks to be an anchor. Yesterday, in Bancho's talk, he mentioned the power of a phrase from Red Pine's translation of the Heart Sutra, the walls of the mind, I think he said it was. And he pondered this, he carried those words with him for years afterwards. During retreat, we can be open to the truth that the words reveal. And in meditation, not necessarily thinking about them, but allowing ourselves to be imbued with the feeling, the experience of them, the essence of them. We have the support of friends. We have the steadiness of living this life ethically And we have bathing in the wholesomeness of these words. We have faith in the Dharma and this seeding of this body-mind with truth. He goes on. Furthermore, Meghiya, a bhikkhu lives with energy instigated by the instigated for the abandoning of unwholesome states and the acquiring of wholesome states. He is vigorous, energetic, and persevering with regard to wholesome states. When mind deliverance is as yet immature, this is the fourth thing that leads to maturity. A bhikkhu, we live with energy instigated for the abandoning of unwholesome states and acquiring wholesome states. This is right effort. This is the sixth step of the Eightfold Path. But listen to how the Buddha puts this. The language is interesting. A bhikkhu lives with energy instigated for abandoning or acquiring wholesome states. Energy instigated for. That's interesting. In seated practice, how do we instigate energy? How do we direct energy? What does that even mean? That's a skill. That's a skill that each of us has to figure out for ourselves how to do in this body. How much or how little effort is needed to direct or instigate energy towards something, towards wholesomeness, wholeness, away from unhelpful thoughts or tendencies of mind. This requires curiosity, perhaps a little bit of playfulness. How do I do that? What's that feel like? And a lot of alert attention and awareness on our experience to try something out and see, how did that result? Was I able to turn towards or turn away without thoughts coming back immediately? How do I do that? A bhikkhu lives with energy instigated for the abandoning of unwholesome states and acquiring of wholesome states. The Buddha isn't suggesting pushing away unwholesome states and getting more wholesome ones, but rather he's pointing to becoming skilled in directing energy toward letting go and toward bringing in what is helpful and then allowing that to happen. Like turning a light on in a dark room and the darkness is gone. We're not trying to make the darkness go away. We're bringing awareness to it. This is the skill of mobilizing energy, of instigating energy in the body. It's so human to want to add something more than to want to take something away. Like Meghiya, it's easy to slip into endeavoring. I want to do more. Or for the inner critic to jump in and say, you haven't done enough. We have to be really aware. We have to infuse our practice. We have to attend very carefully and curiously to recognize when we've slid into that grasping and averting. He goes on. Furthermore, Meghiya, a bhikkhu is wise, endowed with the Noble One's penetrative understanding of rise and disappearance, leading to the complete ending of suffering. when mind deliverance is as yet immature, this is the fifth thing that leads to maturity. Impermanence. Impermanence is a fundamental quality of this life. The Buddha is reminding us, Meghiya, us, remember this, appreciate this. At the very beginning of practice, when you're just sitting down and preparing, remember it in the middle, remember it in the end. This life is impermanent. Reality is impermanent. We are impermanence. How do we bring that into practice in our seated practice today? We feel the breath. We feel the oscillation, the shifting, tingling of aliveness. We experience the arising and passing away of sound, of movement in the room, of thought, of the idea of self, sometimes strong, sometimes gone. What is your experience? What does impermanence feel like in this body? When mind deliverance is not yet mature, these 5 things lead to maturity. Giving and receiving friendship, opening to love, feeling the support and the care around you, and knowing, both from people you know and from people you don't know, from people in the past, from people in the future. Feeling this in your body, feeling settled and grounded by being held. Feeling the steadiness that comes from living an ethical life. Honoring your intention to live by the precepts. Feeling the weight of your robe, your wagesa, your raksu. We're seeing it on others. A physical reminder of this vow. Bathing in wholesome language. Immersing in the wisdom of words, in songs of enlightenment, in chants from this tradition, and allowing the resonance of these words to linger and inform the flavor of meditation. Faith that the words of the Dharma are carried, that carry this truth to us. Arousing energy, instigating energy for the abandoning of what we have learned is unhelpful for us, what's unwholesome, what takes us away, what separates, and instigating energy toward wholesomeness, toward wholeness. And then allowing that to happen, just allowing it as we sit. Appreciating that all of this occurs within impermanence. All is flow, change. We are not separate. This is the experience of breath, of aliveness, of sitting in the intensity of feeling the self. Shifting, sometimes here, sometimes less, sometimes not. Our friend Meghiya needed the Buddha's help. With the best of intentions, he sat down to meditate. He mistook reality. He sat down to meditate from the point of view of this self trying. He was ready to try hard, to endeavor. He really wanted to get something. And he was overwhelmed, and he stopped. Luckily, he had a wise teacher to guide him, to help him understand how to cultivate the maturity and the wisdom that would enable him to fully engage in practice. We have heard many wise words during this retreat, words of wisdom, words of encouragement, perhaps personal advice from one of the teachers. The words from the Buddha to Meghiya are advice on how to cultivate, how to experience and express the maturity that enables deep practice. As we sit down on the cushion, sometimes in the middle of a period, we get so far afield, so caught up. It can be helpful to do what I think of as a hard reset. Just turn the computer off and turn it back on again. To remind ourselves to feel again the qualities, the experiences that are open to this body, to this mind, to this heart. To find the depth in practice. To remind ourselves how to do this. And then just begin again. Open to the joy and supportive friendship. Feel the steadiness of this ethical life. Immerse in words of wisdom. Have faith in the Dharma. Rouse energy. And appreciate impermanence. During one of the meditation periods, Bancho offered us some advice. Can't remember if it was today or yesterday, things are flowing. But he suggested that we practice joyful diligence. Joyful diligence. Thank you for that advice to remind us to practice with joy. We can fold that in to our experience as well. And please have faith. We have a wondrous opportunity to study, to practice, to embody these ancient teachings in this beautiful place at this time, surrounded by friends. It's so rare. So please take advantage of the days we have left. Take advantage of this opportunity and practice diligently and joyfully.